Okay, I got the thumbs up, so we're ready to rock and roll today. Good morning. Welcome to the second day of the 2021 Niagara County Agribusiness Outreach Forum. Again, my name is John King, President of Niagara County Farm Bureau, and I'll be your MC for the next couple hours. First, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for taking the time to be with us and share their valuable information to our guests this morning. Today, we'll provide you with some valuable information in regards to succession planning and labor issues, as well as other services available for our farms and businesses. Just some housekeeping for today as we go through the presentations. There is a Q&A tab on your right-hand side available for questions, and given enough time, we'll address those questions at the end of each section. Please, when you ask a question, address it to all, not specifically to one individual, because we will not be able to see that question. So please address it to all. And if time allows, we'll circle back at the end of each series of presentations or at the end of the session to answer any questions we may have missed. With that, I would like to introduce Priyanka Sharma from the U.S. Small Business Administration for our opening remarks. Priyanka currently serves as an Assistant Chief Counsel for Advocacy at the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Advocacy. The Office of Advocacy oversees federal agency compliance with the Regulatory Flexibility Act, a law that requires federal agencies to assess the impact of their regulations on small business and to consider less burdensome alternatives. As such, Priyanka works closely with federal agencies, businesses, and trade groups, and the White House Office of Management and Budget to ensure that the voice of small business is heard within the regulatory process. Priyanka's portfolio includes agriculture, energy, and natural resource law and policy. Priyanka also serves as co-chair of the Women in Government Relations Task Force on Energy, Environment, and Agriculture, and in 2019 received the Outstanding Public Sector Member of the Year Award. Priyanka received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Illinois Wesleyan University and her Juris Doctor degree from the American University Washington College of Law. She is a member of the Bar of Illinois and the U.S. Supreme Court. Priyanka, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thanks so much, John, and thanks to everybody for having me. Next slide. So as John mentioned, we are the Office of Advocacy. Even though we do have SBA in front of our name, we're actually independent of SBA. Congress in the 70s decided that there wasn't enough emphasis on the impacts of federal regulations on small business, so they created our office to be the regulatory watchdog. So being independent means that we don't have to clear any of the comments that we write through SBA, through Congress, or through any other agency. We're able to comment directly to every other federal agency on their rulemaking. Next slide. So basically our role is to ensure, as John said, that agencies are complying with this obscure statute called the Regulatory Flexibility Act. And I won't bore you with all of the details of that act today, but essentially it requires agencies to look at cost-saving alternatives to small businesses if the rule that they're proposing is going to have a significant impact. And so our job as the Office of Advocacy is to make sure that agencies are actually doing that. In addition to that, we also train the agencies on complying with it. And then we engage in public comment with the agencies. If we don't think they've done a good enough job, we can write a letter to them, basically stating the small business concerns and our suggestions for alternatives. And the way we do that is obviously through small business outreach. Next slide. So I wanted to just put this chart up, and I won't go through every line by line item, but I do want to flag that we are different from SBA. And my colleague Victoria Reynolds is on the attendee line today. She's the Deputy District Director in the Buffalo office. So if you have concerns with disaster assistance, loans, or you need financial counseling, that's the office that you're going to want to contact for those SBA functions. But if there's a proposed rule, if USDA is proposing a rule or DOI is proposing a rule that might affect your small business, we're the office that you're going to want to contact for that. So we don't work on litigation, we don't work on loan and financing, but we can help you talk to an agency if they're trying to put out a rulemaking that's going to have an impact on your business, and you want to be able to get involved in that process. We do have 10 regional advocates of our own. Those are political positions, so they are not filled right now, obviously. But when we do have those regional advocates, you will have one in the state of New York who is kind of our eyes and ears on the ground. So myself and the rest of the attorneys in our office work out of DC. We do travel frequently when there isn't a pandemic to be able to talk to small businesses on the ground. But we also rely on our regional advocates to help us. We also have a Senate confirmed chief counsel. Obviously, our nominee, we haven't had a nominee announced yet, so we have an acting chief counsel right now. But normally we would have a Senate confirmed position who acts as the agency head of our office. Next slide. So in addition to SBA, there is also an ombudsman office, and that's where you want to go if there is a regulatory unfair policy, unfair enforcement. If you feel like, for example, EPA is unfairly enforcing a regulation on your small business, then you would want to go to the ombudsman office. That's something that advocacy actually can help you with. We are able to provide you with the links and information to file a complaint, and we can also flag certain issues for the ombudsman. We don't get involved in the actual investigation for you, but we can flag those due to our working relationship with that office. And so they would work on investigating your claim with the other agency and then helping you to try to find resolution on that. Next slide. So this chart is kind of busy, but it basically outlines the entire federal rulemaking process. So it might take you back to your middle school days, but basically the way a law becomes a regulation is Congress would pass the legislation, and then it would go to a federal agency, and they would be tasked with developing a rulemaking that all of the regulated parties would have to follow. What I want to make sure is understood about this is that there are a few places where those rules get checked before they're published for public comment. So one of those is when OMB reviews the rule. And so during that time, our office will actually get a draft copy of a rule before it's published, and we have the opportunity to review it as well. And then after that, it will get published on the Federal Register, and there will be a public comment period. And that's really where you, as regulated businesses, come in. That's your opportunity to send information directly to the agency on the rule before they finalize it. And so once that public comment period closes, the agency will go back to the drafting board, draft a final rule. OMB and our agency, as part of the interagency team, reviews it again, and then they'll publish the final rule. So throughout this whole process, our office is going to be looking to ensure that the agencies complied with the small business statute and that they've shown what the impacts are going to be, that they've considered alternatives, and that they're trying to minimize the burden on small business. Next slide. So where you fit in is essentially those three boxes on the right. There are basically three opportunities for you to get involved. So there are three agencies that are required to conduct a small business panel before they even publish a rule, and that's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, EPA, and OSHA. So if those three agencies want to put out a regulation that's going to have a major impact on small business, they're required to convene a panel made up of small business representatives that you can be a part of before they even publish that proposed rule. And they have to put out a report outlining all of the impacts and basically what they are going to try to do to mitigate those impacts. The second place that you can get involved is where I mentioned that OMB reviews the rule, OMB being the Office of Management and Budget at the White House. And when they review those rules, the public can actually request what's called an Executive Order 12866 meeting directly with OMB, and you can voice your concerns directly to them while they're reviewing the rule before it's published. You can do that through their website, and I'd be happy to share that with anyone who would like it afterwards. But essentially, it just gives the public a chance to flag things that both OMB and all of the other interagency review partners should be looking at. So generally for those meetings, you can reach out to me and I can help prep you on the data and information that they'd be looking for so that it's a productive meeting. The one thing about those meetings though is that because the rule hasn't been published, you won't have a chance to see it, so you won't know what's in it. But generally it is really helpful to get in on the front end of that before the rule is published. And then finally, as I mentioned, the final way for you to get involved would be during a public comment period. So you can submit a comment letter to a federal agency during that open comment process. And again, that's something that our office is always willing to help with. We've taken a look at some draft letters that people have submitted and helped them kind of figure out what information is going to be most useful to the agency. Next slide. So there are really 3 steps that we flag when you write a comment letter to an agency. Really, you want to figure out, number 1, what is the comment deadline and where do I comment? Generally, you'll go through regulations.gov and you can just upload a letter there, or you can type it directly into the box that they have. 2 is to figure out the cost. So when agencies are reading these letters, it's really helpful if you can give them actual data. You don't have to give away any proprietary information about your business, but if you can do back of the napkin estimates, this is how much I currently pay for something, this is how much more I'm going to have to pay, or this particular regulation is going to require me to hire additional staff because I'm going to have to hire a compliance manager, or this paperwork is going to take me 3 extra hours a week to do, and this is how much that would cost me in labor time costs. Those are the types of information that the agencies are going to be looking at and that are going to be really helpful to them. And then finally, you're going to want to tell them whether there are any options or alternatives. So to give you an example, our office was heavily involved in USDA's hemp rule. We wrote 3 comment letters to the agencies, and I actually worked with 26 different states with their small business partners on the policy for that. And when you're writing letters like that, you want to give them alternatives. So one alternative that we were trying to help push was allowing for remediation. Well, what does that mean? A lot of agencies don't have the same level of expertise that you have on the ground. And so you want to try to be as detailed as possible about what something like that means. Does remediation mean I get to just mulch it under? Does it mean that I'm going to use pyrolysis to does it mean I'm going to mix it with biomass? You want to try to give them those alternatives so that you make it as easy as possible for them to consider the things that you're asking for. Next slide. So the other thing that you can do is you can submit regulatory feedback to us. A lot of times when new administrations are starting out, it's a great time to flag policies that are already in place that you think they should review and revise. So for example, right now USDA has just an open comment docket for what they are flagging as climate change related issues, but that's really everything. It's anything from biofuel and renewables to conservation policies to mitigation policies, and it's just an open comment docket. And that's a great place for you to flag policies that are already on the books that you think they need to look at and revise. That's another great place to contact advocacy because we talk to the agencies every day, and part of our job is to have a good working relationship with the agencies we work with, so we can also help you flag those policies. We will also put out regulatory alerts. So we have listservs based on issue area and based on agency that you can sign up for, so that small businesses don't have to be looking at the Federal Register every single day to try to figure out what's going on. You will get an email with us with a 1-paragraph alert about the regulation and where you can go to comment and who in our office is handling that particular issue. And then finally, we hold roundtables on a pretty regular basis. Again, we don't have regional advocates right now, so everything we've been doing is virtual. But we do hold both issue area roundtables and then specific roundtables if there's a rule that's that's a big rule, and it's going to affect a lot of small businesses. Next slide. So in closing, I just want to say, you know, the success of our job depends on hearing from folks on the ground about what's affecting them. And especially for me, if I don't know about it, I'm not necessarily going to be able to engage on it. I'm only successful when I can get feedback from small business. So we do need you to reach out to us. You can sign up for the regular alerts on our website. You can email or call me. Everyone in my office has their email and phone number on our website. It's all public information. So you can just go on our website and look it up and be able to reach any of us. And I think I'll just end there and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Again, I just want to mention that these slides will be available at the end of our forum. They will be emailed out to everybody. So all this information will be available, contact information. And of course, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll circle back. Next on our docket is succession planning. And we have three speakers that are going to speak in that regard. A couple growers that have gone through it, and then also Virginia Ginny Carlberg from New York Farm Net. Ginny is a financial consultant with New York Farm Net. She also farms with her husband and father-in-law, milking 120 Holsteins near Jamestown, New York. Her role on the farm is to care for calves and has been dubbed the unofficial secretary. In addition to the dairy, Ginny and her husband started a small produce and livestock farm, raising sheep and goats and growing fruits and vegetables. Their three children especially enjoy the many calves, kids, and lambs born each year and participate in 4-H. Before FarmNet, Ginny worked for 3 years with Farm Credit East and 6 years with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Chautauqua County. She holds a BA in Animal Science from Cornell University. Ginny especially enjoys working with beginning farmers on business plans and helping families transition the farm from one generation to the next. So Ginny, you can go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased to be here today with you. Really looking forward to the rest of the morning as well. Next slide. So New York FarmNet, I'm going to kick things off with a little bit about what New York FarmNet is and how we can help with succession planning. So a little bit of background about FarmNet. We were established in 1986, and it was in response to the national farm crisis going on at that time. A lot of farms were in crisis mode, a lot of bankruptcies were happening, and so Cornell University, the CALS Dean, which is the College of Ag and Life Sciences, Dean put together a task force, and the task force recommended that we create a 1-800 helpline. It is based at Cornell, but available across New York State for farm families experiencing financial difficulties. And through that helpline, they could receive financial and emotional consulting. It's a very unique program across the United States. Next slide. So who we are a free confidential service. We do on-farm consulting. So ordinarily I would be standing in your field or in your milk house or at your kitchen table to work with you. These days we're doing a lot remotely over the phone or via Zoom, but it is what we would consider on-farm consulting. The 1-800 helpline that was established is available 24/7. So in the middle of the night, if you have something, you can always call New York FarmNet and receive a live person. During office hours, you would be in touch with someone from our office, but off hours, there is an answering service that will be able to listen to you and provide you with immediate, within 24-hour response back. You can also go to our website, www.newyorkfarmnet.org, and enter a web form to get in touch with us. And we have 45 consultants throughout the state. There's financial consultants, which I am a financial consultant, and we typically consist of retired ag lenders, farmers, or extension educators. And then there are family consultants, and many of them are social workers, mental health therapists, or involved in some way in family counseling. And as I mentioned, we are based at Cornell University, but we do work from home. Next slide. So this is a geographic representation of all of our consultants. I am down here in green in the southern tier in Chautauqua County, but we do have consultants across the entire state. The purple dot is our main office, and then the green are financial consultants, and the blue are family consultants. Next slide. So we are 100% free. We will never charge for our services, and we do keep things 100% confidential. And that's an important aspect to highlight because we really want our farms to be comfortable sharing their financials with us as well as anything emotional. And so we really stress that in our first encounter with you, that your information will stay private. It will never be shared with anyone. In fact, if we need to talk to anyone outside of you and your immediate family, we have to have a signed release form. So if we need to talk to your banker or to an accountant, we need that signed release form in order to do that. And as I mentioned, we do consider ourselves on-farm consulting. So non-pandemic times, we stand with you wherever you're working or at your kitchen table and try to be face-to-face with you. In the meantime, we've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings so we can still see you on the screen. And some of the things that we do are financial analysis. We assist with decision making. We can help with business planning. So in the initial outset of FarmNet, we were a crisis line, but we've really branched out from there to work with beginning farmers. And that is one of my favorite aspects, is working with beginning farmers in business planning and that financial decision making to improve your business. We do help with family relationships. We do work with retirement and estate planning, business transfer, which we're here to talk about today. We recognize that it is a business, but it's also a family business. So we assist with the management aspect of that, and we help with personal well-being. Next slide. So what to expect when you call the 1-800 number or enter the web form, you would get a call within 24 hours. It's usually, I mean, even within hours, we try to get back to you. And it can be flagged as urgent in our system. So if you have an immediate need, we can make sure that you get that response as urgently as possible. We do send out both a financial and a personal consultant to visit your farm. That is, as I mentioned, a unique aspect of our program, that we have both. And if the issues that we are discussing or the topics we are discussing are primarily financial, the personal consultant can take more of a backseat role, but we always include them in discussions, and they're always going to be there for you. As you become more comfortable with us, you can share more with them. What we'll do is we'll look at the goals that you have. We identify them, clarify them. We put together a plan with you. And this is your plan. So, you know, everything is within your control. We may have advice and things that we think you should be doing, but it is ultimately your decision making and your plan. Then we work on putting that plan into place. We will work to identify the problems and solve the problems. And often we will make outside referrals. Next slide. So as a financial consultant, some of the things that I get involved with is first and foremost to identify the present profitability of your farm. Sometimes we get called and you know that you want to apply for a loan, but we often will backtrack a little bit and say, okay, what is the financial health of this business first and foremost? Is the loan the appropriate way that we want to go? And often it is, but I need to have some understanding of your profitability at that point. So sharing your financial records or trying to get my hands on your Schedule F is very important for me to be able to assist you the best I can. We look at identifying options for improving farm viability, and some of the tools we use, and we help prepare our cash flow budgets, partial budgets, balance sheets, income statements. We can help with all of those. Sometimes it can become overwhelming when those statements are needed for loans. But we can really help you break that down and get them completed for you. We will evaluate your proposed business changes and what that impact might be on profitability. We can help with lenders, working with them and communicating with them and trying to identify options for debt restructuring. Often on farms we see a high debt load, so a restructuring may be needed to alleviate some of the cash flow issues. We can help with a farm sale. Unfortunately, farms do get sold, and succession planning doesn't always happen the way that it needs to. So if the farm sale happens, we can help connect you with appraisers and auctioneers, or we can help line up a direct sale to another farmer because we are spread out through the state, we can best possibly connect you with a beginning farmer who's looking to get into farming. And when I mentioned the outside referrals, this is where it becomes important, because we cannot give legal or tax advice. We are not lawyers and we are not accountants. I'm not a tax preparer anymore, so we can't give that kind of specific advice that you might need. So that's where the referral comes into play. Next slide. Our family or personal consultants, they are really looking for what are your goals for your family and can we help foster those goals. They look for conflict, if there is any, and they look to reduce conflict for you. They often will ask on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your stress load? And that can be funny to be asked that. You might not think of that on a scale of 1 to 10. You might just know it's high. But they are looking for you to identify, self-reflect a little bit. What does that look like for you? How is stress for you, and how are you coping with it? And if there's anything they can do to help reduce stress, they will make some suggestions. We do help with family or business meetings, facilitating them. We will look at time management if that's an issue or something you want to work on. And always, a lot of this stuff boils down to communication, whether it's communicating within your own family or between yourself and other business partners or with employees or with lenders. We can really try to dig into the communication and any of the issues that you might be having with communication. And unfortunately, loss and grief does happen on farms. There may have been a death in the family, there may be a divorce. And so the personal consultants can really, they're a safe place for you to unload. And they really understand that part of your emotion and can help you cope with those things. And the last bullet here, developing a resume. We have seen farms, maybe they sell the farm and now they need to consider a new career. We can help with resume building. We can help you with identifying, okay, you are a highly sought after employee for someone else because you have that tremendous work ethic, and we can help with the resume building. Next slide. So shifting gears a little bit in some high level, very general terms with transition and succession planning. Succession planning is really the process of planning for when the current owner decides to step down from leadership and transfer the farm assets to the next owner. And it's not to be confused with estate planning. It's a different planning process, although there is some overlap. Estate planning is the process for planning for end of life. So it involves wills, healthcare proxies, power of attorney, long-term care insurance. Like I said, they do overlap. For example, when you have a succession plan, you will have to update your will to make sure that those things are in line. Next slide. Some things to consider. These are just observations that we have had with New York FarmNet in our role. Sometimes the senior generation and junior generation, they may have different goals or opinions. They may have different methodology. One of the things we see is, and it's not even just between senior and junior generations, it can also be between siblings or business partners. Just a difference in risk, opinions on risk. You know, someone might be willing to borrow a lot of money and make those big investments, and someone else may decide they really don't want to do that. So it's about reconciling those different opinions and goals and coming together for a common ground. We also, as I mentioned, you know, when I first start working with a farm, I really want to get a handle on that financial status, make sure the farm is healthy. I know this is, when you're looking at succession planning, it's in your heart that you want to pass this on to your son or daughter. You've worked so hard to do that, but you've really got to look at this as a business too, and whether that business is healthy enough to pass down. And on the flip side, the junior generation really needs to understand what they're getting into. And so that's where those financial statements are often, they become tools for discussion. And then another aspect of succession planning is that equal versus fair question. There are usually non-farming children involved. And so the senior generation is looking at those non-farm children and wondering how do I make sure that they are getting fair treatment. It doesn't always mean that it's exactly equal though, right? Because the farming children might be putting a lot of sweat equity in over a number of years. So it's that kind of balancing and weighing in the entire process. And then what does the junior generation need for support? So we see this a lot where mom or dad, they've always controlled the checkbook. You know, they've always written out the bills. They've always done the financial aspect of the farm. And so we need to help support that junior generation to have them know just as much and have that ability to manage the farm that way. You know, maybe dad always placed the seed order. So how do we get the junior generation involved in those decision-making processes? Next slide. So what I like to do as well with succession planning is really backing up a little bit and looking at the business overall, do some business planning. If you don't already have a business plan, taking a look at that. It doesn't have to be a formal business planning process, but just backing up and saying, what does the future look like for your farm? When you're bringing in another generation, does the current farm have enough room to support both generations? And what are some of the aspects you can do to increase profitability to do that? Sometimes that involves diversification or increasing your herd size if you're a dairy farm, increasing acreage, that kind of thing. So really looking at that business planning process and making sure that we have a clear vision for the future. One of the aspects we do look at is a SWOT analysis. If you're not familiar with that, that is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And again, it's just a very broad way of looking at your business and the future for it, some opportunities for growth or some threats that might be on the horizon for your industry, and coming up with some strategies to mitigate those. We also look at SMART goals. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And I do have some templates for that I can share with farms that outlines, this is the objective, this is who is going to be working on achieving it, and this is the date that we need that achieved by. So, you know, just again, any kind of detail you can provide to these goals is very helpful when you're doing succession planning. And you can use SMART goals specifically for succession planning. You know, the lawyer needs to be contacted, and this is the date that we would like to do that by, and this is who's going to reach out for that contact. And along those lines with succession planning, there's also a helpful worksheet that I've used before that is a timeline. So when you're looking at the process, you're thinking, this is very overwhelming. I don't even really know where to start. But if you have a timeline and you have it broken out, these are the specific steps that I need to accomplish, it becomes much more manageable. Succession planning needs to be documented. So as you're doing the process, have a folder, have a file, make sure it's accessible to other people in your family, and just document it, make sure that it's written down somewhere. And then kind of like the business plan, you can't just let it sit on a shelf. So sometimes it needs to be adjusted. You know, I've worked with a farm that they thought they had the next generation lined up, and then the next generation moved away, got married and moved away, or, you know, changed their interest. So sometimes this plan needs to be adjusted. And then communicating it. I think I can't stress enough about communication. It's just very important. Everyone's on the same wavelength, and they all know what's going on. Next slide. So how we can specifically help, as I've mentioned, we have some checklists and templates and worksheets that we can help you with, that breaks the process down so that you don't feel overwhelmed. We view our role with succession planning as helping to get some of that homework done before you go to the lawyer's office, so that you're more prepared and you can make the best use of time with them. It's much more efficient to have all of your documents prepared ahead of time before stepping into the lawyer's office. And so, you know, these worksheets, they all help with that. We also have some surveys, and we've used these with farms. There's a survey for the junior generation and for the senior generation, and they are geared toward farms or agribusiness. They ask questions about risk and your tolerance of risk. They ask questions about your interest levels in passing the farm to the next generation. You know, is that super important to you, or do you not care if it goes to the next generation? That's more of a senior generation question. It will ask from the junior generation standpoint, are you interested in taking on more responsibility, and in what ways? Are you interested in record keeping? And so what we'd like to do is we have people everyone involved in the farm fill those out, and we can help compile the information, even anonymously. You know, sometimes there's multiple siblings, or a husband, wife, son, daughter-in-law. And so each one of those people will fill them out, and then we can look for common ground or opportunities for fostering communication. Next slide. We can also connect you with research and university-based resources. So in my opinion, that's very important. You know, Google is at your fingertips, but you want to make sure that you've got the best information that you can get. And so the research-based, university-based resources are critical in that, to make sure that you have the correct information. And then, as I mentioned, we can make referrals. We do have a list of lawyers that we maintain. They are vetted in the fact that we have worked with these lawyers before with farms, so we know that they do farm related work and they have the experience level. We never take the list out and just point to a specific name and say, this is the person you need to work with, but it gives people who have no idea where to start, some place to start. And it's by no means exhaustive. There's a lot of great lawyers out there, but you know, this is someplace that they can look down through and say, okay, I know this specific lawyer works on succession planning, or this one works on solar leases, for example. We do not have a list for tax preparers at our fingertips like we do the lawyer list, but we are spread across the state, so we can help connect you with a tax preparer that specializes in agriculture, because we feel that's an important aspect. Again, you know, there's high quality tax preparers out there, but when you're talking about a farm sale, you want to really make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row with the tax perspective. And then, especially for our personal consultants, really looking at those communication gaps, opening difficult conversations. I mean, succession planning and estate planning, they're not comfortable topics to talk about. It's hard to sometimes even bring it up. So we often will get a call from the junior generation saying, you know, look, we've got to do something. Mom and dad are approaching 80. You know, we've got to get this plan in place, but we don't even know how to bring it up. So that's where FarmNet can come in, and we can gently bring it up, and we can help to just bridge those gaps, you know, help you with the communication. Next slide. So I'm giving you the 1-800 helpline number if you're at all interested in that, as well as our website. I invite farmers to get in touch with me directly, but they have to go through the 1-800 number at some point anyway, to be able to work with FarmNet. So I didn't include my personal information here, but I can always give that to the moderators of this event if anyone needs to get in touch with me. But again, you know, you have to call that 1-800 number anyway. And what you can do is you can request to work with specific consultants, but everybody with FarmNet is super knowledgeable and they really understand farming. You know, we either have farms ourselves or we've worked in the industry our entire lives. So I appreciate your time today, and I'll be online for the rest of the morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. Great information. We will have this available out to everybody after the forum. Next up, we have Andrew Millville. Andrew is born and raised on a small dairy farm in the town of Wheatfield. Every generation on both his mother and father's side of the family were farmers, going back to the immigrations from Germany back in the mid-1800s. Andrew received a mechanical engineering degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1994 and worked as an engineer for the Case IH division of Case Corporation from 1994 to 96 in Burr Ridge, Illinois. In 1996, he returned home to farm and eventually took over the grain and hay operation that was run by his grandfather and then by his uncle. Andrew has been the sole owner of AM Farms LLC since 2010, which currently farms properties in the towns of Cambria, Pendleton, Wheatfield, Niagara, Lockport, Royalton, and Newfane. Andrew resides in the town of Cambria with his wife, Kelly, son, Josh, and daughters, Emily and Allison. Andrew, thank you for being on with us. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Do you want to go to the next slide? I want to thank Jenny for that wonderful presentation. I think you're going to see some overlap on a few things, and I think it's just going to stress how important some of these aspects are to make succession planning work. To me, I think the single biggest thing through all this is communication. As farmers, we tend to be solitary people. I think some of us really like that. We do our own thing. We're in a tractor all day long. We like being by ourselves, and we don't talk to people that often. So sometimes communication can be lacking on our part. But in this process, communication is going to be the key to making it all work. First, there's going to be communication between the two parties that are transferring. Usually it's a parent, and then moving the farm to a child. Obviously, if this is the case, this conversation probably started years and years ago. It was probably evident which children were interested and liked the farm and wanted to stay with the farm. So there's probably been some conversation all along the way. It's not always a parent and a child, though. In my case, it was an uncle and a nephew, and it didn't start. I didn't work with him growing up, but as I got older, and the farm that I was involved with my dad, well, my dad passed away, and we sold the cows, and it was a rather small farm, so it wasn't really a viable option for me down the road. And after I decided that farming was what I really wanted to do, and there was an opportunity with an uncle who did not have an heir, we had many conversations about it. And it turned into kind of like a little bit of a trial period. I worked for him for a little while before we actually fully got the process of succession planning moving. I've also seen cases here locally where it's not even a relative. It can be a hired hand that really takes to it, enjoys it, proves himself proficient in it, and then the conversation gets started there. And even I've seen cases where it's not even somebody that works for it. Somebody's identified somebody that doesn't have an heir to the operation, and just simply approaches him and starts the conversation. I've seen it work. It's rare. Most people say if you want to get into farming, you almost have to be born into it. And for the most part, that's how it goes, but it's not exclusive to that. The next thing with communication that Jenny talked a little bit about too is communication with non-active family members, usually siblings that don't have an interest in the farm, and you have to have that whole discussion about fair versus equal. I guess from one thing that I've seen operations where large families, many kids, and only a couple stay on the farm. And through a lack of communication, more than anything else, these families over time tend to get tore apart when it's all said and done, because some people feel like the generation that stayed on the farm, well, they got everything and I got nothing. I have to say, as a parent with children, that if that was my legacy when it was all said and done, when I'm laying on my deathbed and I know that my family doesn't talk to each other, my children are mad at each other, I would feel that as a failure on my part to communicate what my desires were, how I tried to work with each of them, and that's just not what you want to leave behind. And some situations are unavoidable, yes, but communication all along the way is only going to help mitigate that. The next thing is going to be communication with your lenders. Most operations now, farming continues to consolidate. Operations get larger and larger. Most of us are involved with lenders to some or a large degree. Starting the communication process with them early is only going to help this. They deal, if it's just a simple bank, they may not be quite so understanding of the whole farm situation, but I think most of us in the farming community deal with farm-specific lenders. They want to see you succeed. This is their lifeblood. They're here to help you. Some people look at the lenders as an obstacle, or, oh, I'll give them just the information that they need and let's get back to farming. But the more open and honest you can be with your lenders about this whole process, the smoother it's going to be. They've seen countless different situations. They're often willing to just point you in the right direction, to say, well, I've seen this work here. This is what you should investigate. Like I say, they want to see the business succeed, and they're going to do everything they can to help you. And then we get to communication with consultants. New York FarmNet obviously would be a good starting place. There's other ones as well. Some are free, some cost money, but in the end, you're going to need help with this process. And obviously legal and tax planning are crucial. There's so many things you can do ahead of time that will save you time and money down the road. Next slide, please. I'm not going to get too much into the nuts and bolts, as I'd call this, of the process. There's various tools you can use, simple buy-sell agreements. My uncle and I, we ultimately used a varied form of this where over time I was able to buy the assets from him. We investigated a partnership at the time, but in our particular situation, my uncle is significantly older than me, and we didn't feel at the time that a partnership there was enough time to set it up. If we had started the process a little bit sooner, we could have possibly done something in those regards that would have maybe made it a little bit smoother. Ask your neighbors. There's the one thing that I absolutely love about the farming community is it is overall a very tight-knit community of people that really care about each other. Sure, we're competitors. We maybe compete for land, compete for markets, but in the end, we all love what we do, and we're pretty open and honest with each other, and we're willing to offer advice if somebody needs it. You all know the struggles that you went through to get to where you are, and if you can identify somebody that's somewhat similar situation as yours that's gone through it, I can't think of one person, if you just ask them for some general advice, is going to turn around and, no, I don't have time. That's not how they work. You don't have to get too specific with them, but in general, people are willing to help that have gone through it before. Next slide, please. Agriculture is a very unpredictable business. That is the biggest understatement that you can say. We all know the cyclical nature of it. When I started the process, when I came back in the late 90s, early 2000s, my uncle and I had a plan that within 7 to 10 years, we were going to have this process done, and it was going to be great. Well, the early 2000s were not good times on the farm around here in Niagara County, between low commodity prices, between some serious weather events. We had droughts and floods, and it just did not go well in the business. We weren't making money. It's very hard to transfer a business that's not profitable. Thankfully, we were both willing to adapt, to stretch it out, do what we could. I worked as cheap as I could. He did what he could on the business side to make it go. And thankfully, with a little bit of luck, the farm economy turned around in the late 2000s into the 2010, 12, and it became one of the most profitable times we've seen, and it was able to speed up our process. You're going to need to be prepared for unexpected changes in health, family situations along the way. I think one of the simplest things for this would be as the transition is taking place, term life insurance would be one of my suggestions to protect both entities for unexpected things that could come up. Sure, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but who wants to start this process and then halfway through something completely unexpected changes it to the point where all of a sudden things come to a screeching halt and you can't continue. One other aspect that nobody really wants to talk about ahead of time is to have a plan to get out of it if something desperately goes wrong. It doesn't mean you're not committed to the transfer if you want to have this discussion, but you need to protect yourself. Usually the younger generation is just getting started with a family, has a wife and kids, and you're gonna need to protect your family. You can't work for 5, 10 years at something and then it all goes south and you're left starting over from scratch. Once again, it just comes back to communication. Next slide, please. The one thing I will say about my transfer that I really truly believe made it the most successful was the willingness of my uncle to release the reins as things went on. I'll read this here. Successful transfers are possible only with a commitment of one party to relinquish the reins as the other party proves worthy to do so. So it falls on both the senior generation and the junior generation on this one to make it work. The senior generation has to be willing to give up some control once the junior generation proves that they can do it. They have to try. And ultimately, the senior generation has to train the junior generation. Now, that doesn't mean you have to agree on every aspect of how you run the business. Businesses change over time. Businesses can improve. There's better ways of doing things than what we did 20 years ago. I get that. But if it's a business worth transferring, the senior generation has probably done some pretty smart things along the way to make it as successful as it is. Doesn't mean it can't be improved, but it's up to the senior generation to train the junior generation. But then the junior generation can't just say, dad's done that all along. I'll figure it out when he's gone. That's usually not how it works. I've seen some operations that back in the day were very successful operations, some of the largest ones around, and yet dad did everything until he was gone, and then the junior generation just couldn't handle it anymore. Once he was there, they didn't know how to make a decision because they never had to make a decision. And we can say it's a succession plan is thought of as transferring the assets, but probably as significant of an asset as all the physical property is, the managerial property of the business is just as important. If you don't transfer that to the next generation, you've failed at your succession plan. So it falls on both parties to work at transferring it. And then finally, I'll say patience is a virtue, yes, and it's going to be key in this. For us, like I say, we had a 7 to 10 year plan to make it happen. Ultimately, it was about 15 years from the time we started till the time that everything was fully transferred. And we were willing to adapt along the way and both committed to making it happen and communicating. And in the end, it was successful. And that's what I hope for each and every one of you. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll conclude, and I'll stick around. And if there's any questions at the end as well, I can answer it too. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Great advice. Good stuff. Next up, we'll continue with our program. Someone a little bit younger and working in the transition, Max Russell. Max grew up on the family farm in Appleton, New York. After spending his summers working on the farm and helping pack and sell tomatoes, Max decided to attend Cornell University to pursue a degree in agribusiness management. Upon graduation in 2016, Max had a desire to return to the farm, but he also wanted to take some time to gain work experience outside of the family business. That led Max to take a job with Douglas Fruit Company in Pasco, Washington, a large apple and stone fruit grower, packer, and shipper in Washington's Columbian Basin. After a year and a half in Washington, Max decided to return home to the family farm, where he is now the 6th generation to farm in Appleton. Max is currently farming with his dad, Peter, 2 uncles, Bill and Paul, and a dedicated team of employees. The farm currently grows apples, tomatoes, cabbage, peaches, field crops, and operates a storage facility located in Burton. Max, it's all yours.
Thanks for that introduction, John. I guess just a little bit of background on the farm beyond what John said. We mainly focus on apples, fresh apples. So we grow about 350 acres of apples, and then we have the storage facility, and we store fruit for some other growers as well. And then over the years, we've kind of filled in the beginning of the apple season and then the tail end with vegetables, just to round out our labor needs and the labor force. So we've kind of settled on that core 3 crops of tomatoes in the summer, apples in the fall, and then storage cabbage in the late fall. And then recently here, I've got started with growing some corn and soybeans, and that's becoming a bigger part of the business. Just allows us to get into a more mechanized crop So going forward, it's just kind of the way things are going. The labor situation is getting tougher and tougher, and we're still committed to the fruits and vegetables, but it's hard to kind of grow that end of the business without adding a lot of labor. So that's kind of the situation I came into, I would say, coming out of college, and that's kind of where we are today. So you can go to next slide, Kathy. So I guess the general transition conversation, how we got started. We are the farm. It is organized as an S Corp, Russell Farms Incorporated. So I don't know if there's really an advantage to being an S Corp. It is a pass-through entity, which has its pros and cons. I think it was popular in the 60s from what I was told when my grandfather incorporated the farm. If we were to do it again today, probably would do an LLC. I think those were a little cleaner and simpler, but at this point, no real benefit to changing from an S Corp, I guess. The way we're currently organized is we have 7 shareholders, my mom and dad being the principal shareholders, my 2 uncles, and then myself, my brother, and my sister. We both were gifted a small number of shares by my grandfather probably 15 years ago. Not exactly sure why he did that, but I wasn't complaining at the time, I guess. So it was kind of worked out for us. So the fact that I was a shareholder to begin with for the last couple of years, that gave us a good framework to start with once I started talking to my dad about what the future might look like. Next slide. So like John mentioned in my introduction there, I went to Cornell for agribusiness management, and I knew I wanted to come back to the farm. That was really my ultimate goal, but luckily and thankfully I had a lot of different professors and meetings and presentations, and people time and time again were encouraged me and the rest of the students at Cornell that came from farm families to go work for someone else, go kind of see the world, if you will, go experience something else, learn what it is to work for someone else that isn't your father, your uncle, your mom. So I kind of took that to heart, and I went out to Washington State. I had an internship in college as well, worked for a different company, and both of those experiences were really invaluable. They kind of showed me what the other parts of the industry look like. And even today, I really find myself drawing back on those experiences and kind of using that to inform decisions and whatnot. So, I mean, I went out to Washington under the context of knowing I wanted it to be a short-term deal, which that can kind of make it tough in a job market. Employers know that, like my generation, the younger generation, we don't stick around at jobs for too long, but no one likes to hire someone when they know it's going to be a short-term deal. So I was lucky enough to find like more of an internship type opportunity that turned into a full-time deal, and I was able to leave on good terms with the family I was working for in Washington. So while I was out there in Washington, I stayed in tune with my dad and just seeing what was going on the farm and discussing things. And it eventually came to a turning point in Washington. I had been there for about 1.5 years, and either I was going to have to commit and be there for a while longer and really get involved in the company out there, or it was time to come home. So I certainly wanted to come home, and there was room back at the family farm for me to come home. That's another big thing. A lot of friends and whatnot going through college, the big question is whether or not the business can support the next generation, if it can support another full-time manager or a family. So that's something that certainly has to be considered. In my case, the farm was to a size and to a complexity that it certainly could afford to bring on another full-time person, in this case myself. So there was certainly room at home on the farm to come back and jump in. So I just started the informal conversations with my dad, and he expressed interest in me coming back. And I kind of, sometimes I'm a stickler for formalities, so I actually did send him a cover letter and resume. I didn't want to take anything for granted. He probably just deleted the email, but anyway, I thought that was important in my case. So next slide. So I basically started back on the farm, and we didn't have much of a transition or succession plan in place with my dad and I. It was understood that we were going to work toward that. And I guess just the nature of the relationship I have with my dad. We work well together and we communicate well together, and there's a high level of trust there. So for me, just having that general understanding was enough for me to come back. I kind of knew he wasn't going to pull the rug out from underneath me after a couple years. So we didn't really nail down a whole lot of details right away. We just understood that we would start working toward that in short order. And eventually I came back, started on the farm full time in 2018. And then we did get started on the process. So, and we basically just went with a general buy-sell agreement between all the shareholders. So we just in general corporate governance, I guess we felt that would be it's a good thing to have if you have, whether it's family members or non-family partners, regardless, it's good to have a framework for how the stock, the shares of the business can transfer between the partners, and whether or not you're allowed to sell to outside people, or if there has to be a first refusal amongst the current ownership group. So there's just a lot of different things going on there. So, I mean, just aside from the succession planning piece of it, we felt it was good to have a buy-sell agreement in place. And then the current situation is I had two older uncles, older than my father. They're both working on the farm full time, and they have no plans of slowing down, but they are approaching retirement age, I'd say. They both had children that currently aren't really interested in the farm. They weren't looking to pass that along to their kids. So between the two of those, the two uncles, it basically gave us a starting point that we could develop this buy-sell agreement, and that I could start to buy out my two uncles. And then that would kind of provide some retirement income for them, and it would give me a little more stock and ownership in the business as I transition into a higher level of management, so to speak. So the basics of the buy-sell agreement, any general lawyer should be able to get you started, I would say, but certainly a good idea to engage with someone maybe like FarmNet or another consultant that could point you in the direction of an experienced agricultural lawyer that's done these agreements before. That's always a good place to start. So, but the general idea of this buy-sell agreement was we set a reasonable per share price, and then we had an escalator on that. So over the every year the per share price goes up by, for us, we chose 3% at the time, something that would have been close to inflation or maybe a little bit higher. We had a starting point to go off of because my grandfather had passed away, and he passed away in 2014, and then it took a while to get the estate settled, but we had to come up with values for the stock he held at the time of his death. So that gave us a starting point for the per share price. And for us, kind of one of our guiding principles that my dad has operated on for the last couple years or so is that we made a conscious decision to aim for a fair price to value the company, but we were certainly below fair market value. So I think sometimes in farm businesses it can be a bit of an ego game. I mean, if you value your land and your equipment and everything as high as you possibly can, it looks good for a second on paper when you look down and see that bottom number. But when you play that out and then you divide that by your number of shares and you try to sell that or transition that, all of a sudden you have a big value to pass down or to try to work with. So, and certainly there's a reason to go for as high a value as you can if you're looking for collateral for a loan or funding. But in our case, we didn't need that. We weren't looking to inflate the values. So we basically went with a value that was fair, that the IRS wouldn't kind of flag. I mean, if you have $100,000 business and you say it's worth $1,000, the IRS is they're going to be after you because they want their piece as well. So for us, that was one of our guiding points, is that a fair price, but not overinflated, just to keep the value somewhat reasonable. Next slide. So for the buy-sell agreement, I basically just entered into a legal contract within the confines of that buy-sell, where I was buying 10 shares a piece from each of my uncles over the course of 20 years. And that basically wipes out their stock over the next 20 years, transfers it over over to me, and that's kind of what we've been going with. So in this case, for right now, I'd say we're in the first step of the whole transition. So my mom and dad and my brother and sister, they both still own their stock, and that's all currently separate. Our current transition plan hasn't included that. But right now, our first phase was just kind of taking care of my uncle's ownership and getting that transferred over. So we still have plenty of work to do, but this was allowed us to get a start on it. So my second point there, I think personally is an important one. Making the next generation buy out the business at full market value it's a tough proposition. So I guess we were able to format things so that my compensation package, I guess you'd say, my salary, my wages on the farm, it was the way my dad kind of phrased it. He said it's going to be less than what I would be able to make out in industry. So it's probably a good chunk less than what I was going to be able to make if I had stayed out in Washington State. But it was certainly enough to cover basic living expenses and kind of take care of temporal needs. And then the way we set things up was that at the end of the year, the corporation basically gives me a payroll bonus that allows me to buy the stock from my uncles. So this process probably wouldn't work for every business, every situation. For us, it does work. Right now, you need to have strong cash flow. We're basically able to fund this transition through business cash flow. So that may not work for every situation, every farm, every family, but for us, this is kind of how it's working. The tough part is, and I was just talking to a neighbor about this the other day, and we had a very similar conversation, that basically buying the farm at face value, one generation to the next, it's just a huge burden. Even if you can find a loan or a lender that would fund that for you, you just have, whether you, I guess no matter which way you slice it, there has to be a lot of positive cash flow if to make it work one way or another. So we tried to go this route where hopefully wouldn't be overly burdensome going forward and kind of accomplish the goals that we set out at the beginning. So, and then my last point there, second to last point, I guess, it certainly helps to have off-farm retirement savings. So from what we've seen going through this process and going to different seminars and things, if all of your equity is wrapped up into the farm business, and then the senior generation wants to transition out and transition into some sort of retirement, if there aren't any off-farm retirement savings, the only option is to either sell the farm or make the next generation buy it out at a relatively high valuation. So, and that works in some situations, but as farms over the past couple decades have gotten bigger and more complex, these turn into some pretty big entities. So having some off-farm retirement savings where the senior generation isn't looking to sell all their assets to fund retirement, that really helps the situation. Next slide. So do's and don'ts, I guess, kind of similar to what Andrew and Ginny have both spoken about. Communication is key. That's really where it all starts, and it's what's going to define your success or failure. So for me, I found that it's important to set up a time where everyone is willing and able to engage and think about the issues at hand without distractions. It's certainly hard with phones and computers and people stopping in the office and everything else. It's very difficult, but it seems a little ridiculous. My dad and I, we're in an office together, and our desks aren't that far apart, but we like set up formal meetings with each other, because sometimes he'll want to dig into a topic about just a general business management item, not even transition planning. And I'm in the middle of something and I'm not able to focus on it, and it's tough to just drop everything and jump into that. So my dad, we've had to kind of just set up a meeting, say, hey, this afternoon at 3 o'clock, let's just sit down and get this done. So it's good to kind of put boundaries on that, so you both know what you're expecting, instead of just having something dumped on you while you're in the middle of something else. Also, another do for the process, I'd say, is start early in the process. It takes time. There's a lot of different hurdles to get across. it's good to have a plan and just kind of know that it's going to be a difficult process and be willing and be ready for those hurdles. You have to talk about the tough topics, unfortunately, deaths, injuries, incapacitations, all that sort of thing. It's not a fun thing to talk about, but it is necessary. Then on the bottom here, some don'ts of the process. Don't assume really anything. You don't want to assume that the other person knows what you're looking to do, what you're looking to get out of the business. Another don't, I would say, is it's important not to get an attitude of entitlement. So for me, the way I view it, working in a generational business, it's a privilege really for me. You know, I'm not entitled to any of this. It's nothing that I've really done. It's the 5 generations prior to me that have built this into something that can support employees and support growth. So for me, I really view it as a privilege, not a right. I kind of look at my role on the farm as being a steward of the business, both the land and the operations and everything else. Hopefully I can make it better and pass it on to the next generation. So coming into it, in my opinion, with that kind of mindset, I'm not looking at this business as a vehicle to get rich and ride off into the sunset and afford a lavish lifestyle. Just hopefully make something that build something that's there for the next generation. So I think that's kind of an important way to come at it. Certainly, we all want to be successful and make money and kind of keep things moving and growing and everything like that. But yeah, just kind of having realistic expectations helps as well. Next slide. Some roadblocks I've seen. It's important to know the business inside and out. Depending on the size and complexity of the business, there could be a lot of different things going on on a daily basis. So it's important to actually understand how all your business processes work and what's going on, who's making decisions, how things get done. We've gotten to the point where we have, besides the family members, we have 3 full-time managers that are all making decisions on a daily basis. So it's important for me, coming into the business fresh out of college and then my work experience elsewhere, it was important to come in and you have to ask a lot of questions of the senior generation, of the family members, of your managers. It's just important to know who's making what decision and where the responsibilities are. For me, it's getting comfortable with a management hierarchy that you can't make it. You get to a size where you can't make all the decisions yourself. There's just no way that can happen or is realistic. So just being comfortable in that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, just figure out where to fit in and where to improve. So I think Andrew made a really good point where he said there's things to learn from the senior generation. If they have a business worth passing on, they've done something right. So I think that's a really key point. Also, it's important to know that disagreements will come up. Just try to understand where the other side is coming from. For me, I have to remind myself I'm not always correct either. So you just have to understand that and kind of have that in your mind as you move forward. Next slide, please. So I guess suggestions on approaching a family member or a farm owner. It's just, in my opinion, it's important just to be humble, honest, and forthright. Just you don't want to beat around the bush too much. Just make your desires and your aspirations known, whether it's talking to the senior generation or maybe a farmer you've been working with or a neighbor or something to that effect. Just let them know what's on your mind, what you're thinking. Be respectful. And at the end of the day, if they say, no, I don't want to sell you this, or I don't think you're capable of transitioning into the business, I mean, at the end of the day, it's their decision, I guess. So you can kind of just make your desires known and you can move on. So another key thing is it could just be a timing issue. You may need to be patient. So Andrew mentioned the early 2000s. I was in grade school at the time, but I've heard plenty of stories. Apple prices were in the dumpsters and things were bad. So, I mean, if I was looking to if the next generation was looking to transition to the farm at that time, that certainly farm economics plays into it. So that's why it's good to get the process started early, not waiting until everyone's looking to be done next year. You know, if you're rushed into the process, you're going to make decisions that you weren't really looking to make just because you want to be done. So So it's important to start early and just give yourself some time and be patient on that end of it. Next slide. So some different services. The way my dad and I, we kind of went around about our current step in the succession plan. We just went through a good accountant and a good lawyer. So the folks that we're using within the business already, we were confident we had the team in place to get done what we wanted to do. So we didn't really bring on outside help officially, so to speak. Over the last 5 to 6 years, though, we have been going to a lot of different events and seminars pre-COVID, when there was a lot more stuff going on. That was a hot topic for a while. So the Cornell Cooperative Extension, the dairy and field crops team, they had a big series a couple years ago that explored a lot of transition and succession planning topics, and we went to a couple of those, and that got us introduced to a lot of these different topics. FarmNet also put on a conference in Syracuse, probably in 2016 or so, that I attended with both my mother and my father, and that opened our eyes, I guess, to the whole process. Just got everything started. So we've been thinking about this and working toward this for the past 5 to 6 years, and we finally got an agreement in place here a couple of years ago. So we also talked to various financial planners, consultants. Farm Credit East had a tax consultant we talked to. We ultimately didn't go ahead with hiring any of those folks. Those services do get expensive, and depending on the business, it could be well worth it. For right now, that wasn't the best fit for us, so we kind of stayed away from some of that. But those are all certainly good avenues to explore going forward. And at the very least, even if you don't hire a consultant or a financial planner, almost everyone's willing to sit down and have a meet and greet with you and figure out if there's something worth moving forward with or not. So that can be a valuable resource as well. Okay, that's about it for that. Next slide. So just to wrap up, I guess a summary, start the process early. It takes time. Communication is key all the way around. Senior generation and junior generation, just get on the same page and discuss everything. And if you have a question, make sure you ask, because the other person can't read your mind. So strong cash flow makes things easier, just like most things, I guess. For us, that's really a key part of our transition process for now, is having a little bit of excess cash flow in the business to kind of move things along. So again, just with the prospect of the next generation buying the farm at face value, it's tough. It's important for the next generation to put some capital in, to buy in and have that sense of ownership and to have some sort of sacrifice. Eventually, I think that it can be an important part of the process. But for me, for example, if I'm facing different options of working in industry with a good salary and benefits and having a lot of opportunities out there, it's tough to weigh that against basically going into a couple $1 million in debt just so you can put your name on a piece of paper. That's a tough one. So, and that's something that we've discussed with my siblings as well, because neither of them are involved in the farm, but they both have shares in the business. We're not exactly sure what the long-term plan is going to be there, but again, that fair versus equal thing comes up, and sometimes, yeah, the operating sibling, the person involved in the farm, that they may have a lot of assets attached to their name, but oftentimes in today's farm businesses, there's a lot of debt attached to that as well. So it kind of goes both ways. So just lots to think about there. And then for me, kind of like what's helped with the retirement savings, what's helped us through this process is having some retirement savings saved up. So that's something I'm working toward, trying to build some retirement savings. So hopefully, if I can pass this farm on to the next generation someday in the future, that I'll be able to offer some of the same opportunities I've been afforded. So that's kind of the long-term goal. So that's about all I have there. Thanks for the opportunity. John and everyone else. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Max. Good information. And thank you to Andrew and Ginny as well. That was some excellent information, and hopefully you learned something. And of course, if you have questions, please address them in the Q&A and address them to everyone. And we'll just keep the program moving. We're going to switch gears a little bit, though. We're going to talk a little bit about some services that are available to farms and farm businesses. And first, we have Bree Woodbridge. Bree has been a business advisor for Niagara Small Business Development Center for over 5 years. Bree works with all types of small business clients and specializes in agricultural clients, farm setups, and food businesses. 10 years ago, Bree and her husband moved to Lockport to start a fruit and vegetable farm on the historic family farmland. She understands what it takes to start and grow a successful farm business. Bree is a member of the Cornell Extension and Northeast Organic Farming Association and is involved in many local food projects, such as the Niagara Falls Local Food Action Plan and Lockport Community Market. In her previous career, Bree coordinated international diplomatic exchanges for thousands of small business owners across 50 industries for the Library of Congress. She is passionate about helping small businesses succeed through education and awareness. Bree, you're all set.
Thanks so much, John. So much for giving me the opportunity to talk about a resource that we have right here in our county Small Business Development Center, which is located over at Niagara County Community College. Next slide. So Small Business Development Center is it's a federal program, and there are SBDCs all across the country. And we have 24 offices right here in New York State. It is a federally funded program to help small business owners really start their business, expand their business, find the funding that they need to do that, connect them with capital resources, and hire employees and grow their businesses successfully. We are a resource partner of the Small Business Administration, which is a federal program. For those of you who don't know, this always surprises me. The definition of a small business is any business with less than 500 employees. So there's rarely a revenue cap on it. It's really the amount of employees. So that really that defines 99.9% of all the businesses in the United States. There's currently 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. So it's really an economic driver. And farms do fall into that. As I said, we have 24 offices across the state, and we have one right here in Niagara County. And you could see some of our statistics since SBDC was established in 1984. We've been able to help over 500,000 citizens of New York State get $7.4 billion in funding in order to start and grow their businesses. And SBDC clients have created or saved 237,000 jobs. This has probably even increased since the time I captured this off of our website. Right here in Niagara County, we've helped over 18,000 businesses since we were established in 1984. And those businesses have invested $525 million in their businesses and created nearly 12,000 jobs here in Niagara County. So we've worked with a lot of businesses in several industries. And of course, since agriculture is such a huge driver of our county economy, we do work with farms as well. Next slide. So what do we do? How can we help farms? SBDC offers free and confidential. If there's one thing I want you to remember, your takeaway, it's that our services are free and they're incredibly confidential, entirely confidential. And what can we help you with? We offer several services because every small business is different and unique. So we're able to really tailor our services to really help the business or the farm in whichever kind of step in their journey where they are at that moment. We really specialize though in helping small businesses when they're just starting up or they're getting ready to expand, with developing their business plans and their financial statements that they might need to take a successful loan proposal to a lender. That's really where we specialize. That's the core of what we do. We help with business plans and developing those pro formas. So all of the financial statements you need, the balance sheets, the income statement, and the cash flow statement. And it's that we love helping businesses do that. Let's see, so that we can help you do that when you're going to a bank. And a lot of times we get referrals from banks that say, okay, this client came to us, but they're going to need a business plan in order to apply for a loan. We can help with when you're going to the FSA, sometimes they need a business plan. The USDA grants that might be require some sort of business plan. We also help with economic disaster. So our 7 advisors have been very busy for the last year helping our clients prepare for their PPP loans or their EIDL loans because we are a resource partner with the SBA. So we've been helping clients directly with getting prepared for that. The entrepreneurial education. So we do a lot of trainings and workshops that are free. And now with the pandemic, a lot of our training has come online. So it's virtual. So we can actually connect you with trainings, not just the ones that we do here in Niagara County, but the ones that are happening all across the state. So whether you're just starting out or you're considering starting a business and you really need to know more about how to run that business, we can help you with that entrepreneurial training. Or if you're assuming more of a management role and you need to sharpen your skills as a business owner, we can help connect you with that training as well in all different aspects of business. Procurement and selling to the government. One of the things that SBDC has developed is bid links. So if you're considering contracting with becoming a government contractor, we can set up a profile on bid links. So instead of having to sit there and Google any possible contracts that are coming down the pipeline, we could set you up with a profile so that you're able to track those and they come to you in an email. That's all a free service that we do. International business, whether you're importing or exporting as part of your business. And this is something that some farms do. We have international business experts on staff to help you really understand the ins and outs of that and be able to really grow that aspect of your business successfully. Technology and innovation, we can help with getting that. If you are an inventor or you have something that you think needs to be trademarked or patented and roll that out into the marketplace, we definitely do a lot of work with that and help connect you with the right resources, the trusted and verified resources within the state that can help you with those products. We have specialized education and programs for veterans, for women and minority-owned businesses, and we have Spanish language resources for our Latino business owners. One thing that I didn't put on here that I would like to mention is something that I found incredibly valuable is our research network. We have 5 on-staff full-time research librarians at our central office in Albany that our clients can access for free. So if you're looking at any type of market research, if you have questions about regulations or permitting, how to navigate with some aspect of your business, we can get that information from verified resources. It's been incredibly helpful for businesses that are looking to expand. So let's say they have a value-added product and they're looking to see, okay, we know we need to market this to a new type of client or target audience. We're able to get consumer information and actually map out consumption of that product by zip code. for Western New York or in their target audience. So it's been incredibly valuable for clients to be able to really focus their marketing dollars where it's going to count. Additionally, we provide business lists. So if you're selling B2B, we can provide lists of businesses that are in that category that you're looking for. And that's all a free resource we have for our clients. Just like FarmNet, we are not tax or legal experts, but we've been around since 1984. So, and all of our 7 advisors at our Niagara office are very experienced. So we've all developed lists of referrals that we could provide to our clients as well. So if we don't know the answer, we can help connect you with somebody who can provide that answer. Next slide, please. Studies have shown SBDC clients, they grow faster, they hire more employees, and they stay in business longer. So I think just to echo what Andrew said, you know, we don't have to go it alone. There are trusted and verified resources out there that are here to assist and get your questions answered. Next slide. I have mentioned training and education, and the Entrepreneur Business Series is just one of the workshops or trainings that we provide. We actually just finished up one on Instagram yesterday with a nationally recognized Instagram expert in social media, and that was free. And this we just started last night, and this is a 9-part series. It's all free, just have to register. And these are the topics that we talk about in each. They're 2-hour classes, and they happen on Wednesday evenings. So you can pick and choose which ones you want to sign up for, or you can also sign up for all 9 of them, and it is a certificate program. And so this Entrepreneur Series is useful. Sometimes lenders require some sort of business management training in order to prove you have the experience or the training necessary in order to qualify to run a business, to get a loan. And this series really qualifies for that, helps you qualify for that. And we go through all different aspects, and it's taught by experts in the field. So there are 8 more. So if you're interested, you can sign up on our website. Next slide. Actually, Jenny at FarmNet mentioned the SWOT analysis, and I wanted to leave you with a tool, a handy tool that you could walk away with and be able to use today or the next time you need to for your business, because that's what we do. We provide tools for clients, and this is an incredibly easy tool to use and to understand, and it goes through a SWOT analysis stands for the strengths and the weaknesses that are internal to the business, and looking at the opportunities and the threats that are externally putting pressure onto the business. And you can use this analysis the next time you're thinking about, you have a good idea. Oh, maybe this is something that I want to add to my farm business, or you're considering doing something, or you're just starting out in your business and you're thinking, okay, what are my strengths? What can I rely on in order to start this business? What are my weaknesses? I guarantee you, when COVID-19 hit, every single small business sat there and did a SWOT analysis. They might not have known that they were doing a SWOT analysis, but they did, because they were looking at, okay, here's an economic external threat of a global pandemic, probably not something anybody had anticipated. And they were looking at, how can we leverage the strengths in our business and shore up the weaknesses that we have in our business in order to continue to survive during this global pandemic, this external threat that we have. And some businesses were even able to take advantage of some opportunities that they saw because they were able to leverage their strengths in order to do that. So this is a great tool. My personal goal is to make sure that every small business owner knows how to use this. You can do it anywhere. You can sit down at the kitchen table and really hash out a SWOT analysis pretty easily. So I leave you with that. All right, next slide. And I just want to thank you for your attention and let you know that we do have the Small Business Development Center here. And on a personal note, when my husband and I started our business, our farm 10 years ago, you know, we were so fortunate and appreciated all of the help we got from all of the resources that have been introduced today. Definitely, we took advantage of FarmNet with a very tricky estate planning transfer, and we got all our technical and our production and our farm. We learned a lot. Got a lot of training and education from Cornell and CCE. We found a community of farmers through the Farm Bureau, and you know, we really hashed out the nuts and bolts of our business plan in order to make a successful farm business plan and be able to access funding through SBDC. So so there are definitely resources out there and people that are willing to help you in your journey. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bree. And I would encourage everyone to visit their site and check out the free webinar series that they are offering. And I will mention that again at the end. Next up, I will be speaking on behalf of Niagara County Farm Bureau. I have been involved in Farm Bureau for, I would say, probably the past 10 years. In the past few years, I took over as president from Jim Bittner. I have worked in the agricultural industry for 14 years now with Nutrient Ag Solutions. I received my Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from Niagara University and my Master's in Chemistry from UB. And I live in Lockport, and I don't think I plan on going anywhere anytime soon. So next slide. So this is just a list of our current board members. You know, I'm not going to go through everybody. But we're very diverse. We try to, you know, cover the whole area and all the crops, the different crops grown, whether it be small, large, multiple crops, one crop, you know, maybe a specialty, you know, just to represent and give a better representation of our county on our board and to the state. Next slide. We are grassroots. Our policy development begins at the county level. I would encourage all of you to, if there's any issues that you are having, to reach out to your board members, seek them out for guidance, seek them out for policy. And if there's something that we can help build upon, and basically we use that policy to educate our local leaders, whether it be towns, county leaders, state leaders, even the federal leaders, you know, with how things affect agriculture and businesses involved in agriculture. If there's anything we can do, certainly to help, we will. You know, and if there's some policy that we want to develop, we will start at the county. We will pass it at our county annual meeting, and from there on up, it goes to the state. And as long as we have support throughout the state, we get in our policy book and use that to you know, mold and craft, you know, laws or policy with our local leaders. Next slide. You know, a number of things we do in the community, Farm Safety Night. You know, we've done that several times over the past few years. Obviously, you know, past year, things have changed a little bit. We do lobby days where we will go to Albany and lobby with our politicians just to not only local ones, but the downstate as well. We use adopted legislatures to try and inform them and educate them on rural upstate New York and what goes on, so they better understand, so we don't see things come down the pipeline that might not be conducive for agriculture. Our annual meeting, we do a lot of fundraisers. We partner with Niagara County CCE. We have a chicken barbecue coming up, and any local issues that people need help with. I encourage you again to reach out to your board members, ask questions. We will point you in the right direction. We will provide advice. We'll get you in touch with the right people and hopefully resolve the issue without much drama between local leaders, towns, neighbors, whatever it may be. Next slide. Moving forward, future issues. I mean, it's, agriculture is ever changing. I think we all know the labor issues that both at the state and federal level that we deal with on a year-to-year basis. The overtime law that was passed, we continue to work towards maintaining that at 60 hours. We have some real challenges in the industry going forward. Whether it be the dairy industry and pricing, or getting dairy into certain areas, or whole milk into New York City. We've had some success and we've had some setbacks. Apple industry, we work hard to promote our apples in schools and other groups. Of course, the hemp industry, and now with the new news of the legalization of cannabis, we could see some policies developed regarding that. So there's a lot going on. Renewable energy is being pushed from the state level. So that's a big challenge. That clashes with our private property rights. So there's a lot out there that we do, and we try to protect our farms as best as possible, and help our local leaders and even our downstate leaders realize the damage that can be inflicted with certain laws and regulations. Next slide, please. So I'll leave you with this. March is Ag Month. We just finished up our Ag Literacy Week last week. I believe Ag Day was on Tuesday during our presentation. My contact information is there, and membership right now, if you're interested in joining and learning more, we have a special offer of $139 that will cover the rest of this year and all of next year. Normally our membership is $109 a year. So for an extra $20, it basically gets you your membership for the rest of the year here. So with that, we'll continue on with the program. And of course, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we will address them. So our next speaker, we'll keep this moving, is Mike Cassell. Mike began his career with the county in 1993 as Director of Tourism, leading the county's tourism promotion effort, as well as the Greater Niagara Region Tourism Promotion Program with other representatives from Erie, Orleans, Wyoming, and Genesee counties. From 1998 to 2018, Mike served as Deputy Commissioner of Business Development in the Department of Economic Development, working closely with other economic development agencies to attract new businesses to Niagara County, as well as to assist existing businesses with growth and job retention. From 2018 to present, Mike has served in the role of Commissioner of the Niagara County Department of Economic Development, leading a staff that specializes in planning and zoning matters, business development, brownfield development, and information support for businesses and the public. Mike chairs the Niagara County Economic Development Alliance and sits on various boards, including the county's Workforce Development Board, Empower Niagara Board, Brownfield Development Corporation Board, Niagara and Orleans Regional Land Improvement Corporation Board, Invest Buffalo Niagara Board, and the Buffalo Niagara International Trade Gateway Organization Board. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that, and I appreciate being here with all of you today. And you're getting some great information. Hopefully this information I'm going to share will be just as good. And Kathy, you can advance to the first slide. One of the things we do, a lot of folks think that economic development is, hey, go after that silver bullet project or company to get them attracted to your community. And we do that, but that's not all we do. Statistics continue to show that 80% of new jobs in a community come from existing companies. So we have developed a very aggressive business growth and retention program with the goal to keep the line of communication open with our existing companies. That's so very important. And we've stepped up that outreach during this COVID-19 pandemic. We're reaching out to many more companies. Hopefully this year we'll have reached out to about 150 companies, again, to keep that conversation going. It's very important for us to understand where a company is, if they're looking at a potential expansion. If you are looking at a potential expansion, it's important for us and our partners to be at the table with you confidentially at the very beginning, the planning stages of your expansion. But even if it's not, just learning about who you are and what you do and maybe how we can help. There's a confidential business survey that we will make available to you. You see, you can't really read the one on the right here, but we can send a fillable form to you. If you would like to meet with us and any of our partners, this form helps us develop the team to meet with you virtually, by telephone conference, or at your business. So we'd like to hear from you. And if you're interested, please let us know. Next slide, Kathy. Bree talked about the research network, and they do have a great research network there at Small Business Development Center. A lot of people don't realize that our office is a local affiliate data center, and we are such under state contract with the New York State Department of Labor. So we're quite the clearinghouse for statistics as well. That would be valuable to you as you're doing your business planning. Demographic, housing, income, educational attainment, means of transportation, it's all there, and we've got some very up-to-date data. There's a data set called the American Community Survey, or ACS, that updates that data on a yearly basis. So again, that service is offered to you as well. Next slide, Kathy. John mentioned that I chair the Economic Development Alliance, and that alliance group, our economic development partners, are very, very well described in this booklet, the Connections for Business Directory, which we'd love to get out to you if you'd like a copy. It contains just about every economic development agency that has a resource available to you as a business, including federal, state, utilities, chambers of commerce, and also municipal contact information as well. These are our partners. SBDC is one of them. You heard from Bree this morning. I like to call this the Bible for business. So we do this, we update this Bible every 2 years. If you'd like a copy, all you need to do is ask us. And by the way, that Economic Development Alliance group, many of our partners work with us on virtual business workshops. And we're going to be doing another virtual business workshop in April, on April the 14th at 10 a.m. So if you'd like more information on that, you can go to our website. You'll get that on the final slide of my presentation today. Next slide, Kathy. One of the programs that was created not all that long ago was the Empower Niagara program. It was created back in 2008 after the New York Power Authority received the green light to operate that Niagara Power project in Lewiston again for another 50 years. Niagara County Legislature wanted to do something to help small business that weren't eligible for the New York Power Authority's expansion power program. So they created the Empower Niagara program, and again, to help small business. And by the way, the very first customer was one of the gentlemen you just heard from on our panel today, Max Russell at Russell Farms. Empower Niagara assisted them with some low-cost power benefits as they continued to grow their controlled atmosphere facilities at Russell Farms in Newfane. This slide shows you some of the qualifying criteria. There's an application online. There's our website, by the way. And again, I'll give you my website again at the end of this presentation. This is exclusive to Niagara County. You've got to be located in Niagara County. And another aspect of this is that you cannot be a recipient of a NIGRA program to get it. If you want more information, again, just go to that website, and we would be more than happy to walk you through the process of becoming an Empower Niagara customer. Next slide, Kathy. There are other low-cost power programs out there. If you've got a power-intensive company, or you even have a question, hey, how power intensive am I? We could help find that out for you and help you. Power Authority has the expansion and replacement power programs. The expansion and replacement power programs are for companies that are within 30-mile radius of the Niagara Power Project in Lewiston. Companies have to commit to investing in their facilities and creating new jobs for expansion and replacement power. The Recharge New York program is a statewide program that offers a blended rate of power, but still a pretty competitive rate for your power. They use power produced at the Niagara Power Project, as well as some market rate power to stick to that blended rate. The program's open for retention as well. So Recharge New York, you don't have to be creating new jobs, but they're going to want you to commit to retaining the jobs that you have. Now, if you're interested, you can go to those websites, you can give us a call, we can steer you to the right people that can help you. And if you're going to apply for recharge or expansion or replacement power, the timeline is important for you. You must have your application in by June 4th. Be considered at the next Power Authority Board of Trustees meeting in July. If that's too soon for you, the next opportunity is an application deadline of October 15th. And then the New York Power Authority Board of Trustees would consider your application in December. So there are a couple of opportunities this year, and you've got time to do it. So reach out to those websites or make that call. You can call us. We can help move you forward with those programs as well. Next slide, Kathy. Finally, the Niagara County Legislature jumped through a number of hoops so that we could be a participating municipality in the EIC Open Sea PACE program. EIC stands for Energy Improvement Corporation, and this program is commercial property assessed clean energy, and it channels private capital funding to industrial, commercial, and not-for-profit building owners for energy upgrades to their buildings, and those upgrades could be in the form of renewable energy like geothermal, for instance, or energy efficiency projects like lighting projects, boiler conversions, furnace upgrades, insulation, HVAC, you name it. If you need a different type of financing, this is a program that can help you finance up to 100% of your project costs. You can apply online. There you see the website. You can call the Center for Economic Development for more information. Or you can go to our website as well, which you'll see on the next slide, and click on the incentives button, the drop down, choose energy incentives, and it'll take you right to the EIC Open Sea PACE website with an application and fillable form right online. Next slide, Kathy. Here's my contact information, my phone number, my email, and there's our website. So again, thank you to all that participated, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it. And we'll keep the program moving right along. I don't see any questions popping up. So next, our next segment will focus on labor issues. These are our final two speakers of the day. First up, we have Melissa Buckley. Melissa began her work with the Division of Immigrant Policies and Affairs in 2013. She started in the field serving agricultural employers and workers, and then transitioned to the Foreign Labor Certification Unit, where she processed thousands of H-2A and H-2B visa applications for New York businesses. Currently, she supervises the DIPA staff in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. Melissa came to DIPA from county government. Prior to that, Melissa's professional experiences include providing translation and interpretation services for the federal government, teaching high school Spanish, and working as a director of development for nonprofit agencies. Melissa earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Spanish with minors in political science and philosophy from Virginia Wesleyan College. She then earned a Master of Science degree in Creativity and Change Leadership from the International Center for Studies in Creativity, housed at Buffalo State College. Melissa, welcome.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Can everybody hear me okay? Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Melissa Buckley, and I am thrilled to be here with you this morning. We will go over the minimum wage rate increases for 2021 and 2022. We'll talk about the Farm Labor Fair Labor Practices Act, the New York State COVID-19 paid sick leave, and then lastly review the New York State paid sick leave. I would like to point out that the current minimum wage in Western New York, or otherwise known as the remainder of New York State, is $12.50 per hour. However, the calendar rate, or the rate for calendar year 2022, has yet to be established. We will now talk about the Farm Labor's Fair Labor Practice Act, and again, the link is there. Next slide, please. As mentioned a few minutes ago, farm laborers now earn 1.5 times their regular rate of pay for hours worked over 60 in a calendar week. In addition, farm laborers must have at least 1 day of rest, which is 24 consecutive hours in every calendar week. Farm laborers can voluntarily work on their day of rest, given they are paid at the overtime rate, which is again 1.5 times their regular rate of pay, which can include the AWR if you are an H-2A employer. Regarding changes to unemployment insurance, Employers, including FLCs, are now required to provide unemployment insurance coverage once the employer has paid remuneration of $300 or more to employees in a quarter. In addition, H-2A foreign guest workers are excluded from unemployment insurance coverage, and employers are no longer required to report them. All farm laborers are covered by the day of rest provision, but there are some exclusions. The following employees may be excluded from coverage if they meet requirements: the foreman in charge, which can be more than one person, members of the employer's immediate family, executives, administrative employees, and professional employees. All farm laborers, including the foreman in charge, are covered by the overtime over 60 hours provision, but there are some exclusions. The following employees may be excluded from coverage if they meet requirements: members of the employer's immediate family, executives, administrative employees, and professional employees. Overtime, day of rest, and collective bargaining provisions for farm laborers do not apply to members of the employer's immediate family who are related to the third degree of consanguinity or affinity, which is a legal relationship, working on a farm out of familial obligations, not paid wages or other compensation based on their hours or days of work. Also, employers do not have to execute the pay notice and work agreement with family members. An executive employee is someone whose primary duty consists of the management, directs the work of 2 or more other employees, has the authority to hire or fire other employees, or can recommend hiring, customarily and regularly exercises discretionary powers, and who is paid for his services a salary inclusive of board, lodging, or other allowances and facilities. Next, who is an administrative employee? An administrative employee is someone whose primary duty consists of the performance of office or non-manual field work directly related to management policies, exercises discretion and independent judgment, directly assists an employer, executive, or administrative employee, and requiring special training, experience, or knowledge, who is paid for his or her services a salary inclusive of board, lodging, or other allowances and facilities. The minimum salary requirements for executive and administrative employees is currently in Western New York, $937.50 per week. Lastly, who is a professional employee? A professional employee is someone whose primary duty consists of the performance of work, requiring knowledge of an advanced type in a field of science or learning customarily acquired by a prolonged course of specialized intellectual instruction or study. The work requires consistent exercise of discretion and judgment, whose work is predominantly intellectual and varied in character, as opposed to routine, mental, manual, mechanical, or physical work. There is no minimum salary requirement for a professional employee. Next, we'll go ahead and discuss the New York State COVID-19 paid leave. The benefits for employees depend on the employer size and annual income. For an employer with 1 to 10 employees as of 1/1/20 and an annual net income in 2019 of $1 million or less, the employer is not required to provide new paid sick leave days. Instead, employees would use paid family leave and disability benefits. For over $1 million, the employer must provide at least 5 paid sick days. An employer with 11 to 99 employees must provide at least 5 paid sick days. An employer with 100 or more employees must provide at least 14 paid sick days. For the applicable paid leave period, 5 or 14 days, employers must pay the amount that the worker would have otherwise received had they been continuing to work for that period based upon the amount that the employee was scheduled or would have been scheduled had the employer's operations continued in its normal due course. Employees who work a fixed schedule or are paid a salary should simply continue to receive pay for the applicable period. For hourly, part-time, commission salespeople, and other employees who are not paid a fixed wage, employers should determine the employee's pay by looking at the representative period of time to set the employee's average daily pay rate. It is important to note, if employees voluntarily travel to any state other than a contiguous state for more than 24 hours, they will not be eligible for New York's COVID-19 quarantine leave benefits if the travel was not taken as part of their employment or at their employer's discretion. Any state that shares a border with New York would be a contiguous state. So these states include Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. Employees are not required to repay any COVID-19 sick leave benefits. Citizenship or immigration status is not a factor in eligibility for COVID-19 paid leave. The employee's job is protected during COVID-19 leave. The employer cannot fire or act against employees because they took the leave. Employees are entitled to be restored to the position held prior to taking leave. Any COVID-19 quarantine leave should not be counted as an absence that may lead to or result in discipline, discharge, demotion, suspension, or any other adverse action. Affected employees may file a complaint with the Department of Labor on the dedicated website. Lastly, let's discuss the New York State Paid Sick Leave Program. We'll start with some key dates. On September 30th of 2020, covered employees in New York State started to accrue leave at a rate of 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. On January 1 of 2021, the employees were able to start using the accrued leave. With this program, again, the amount of sick leave depends on the size of the employer. Employers with 4 or fewer employees and a net income of less than $1 million in the prior tax year must provide employees with up to 40 hours of unpaid sick leave. Employers with between 5 and 99 employees and employers with 4 or fewer employees and a net income of greater than $1 million in the prior tax year must provide each employee with up to 40 hours of paid sick leave per year. Employers with 100 or more employees will provide up to 56 hours of paid sick leave per year. The leave must be accrued at a rate not less than 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. As an alternate to employees accruing 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, employers may choose to provide the full amount of sick leave required by this law at the beginning of each calendar year. Such upfront sick leave is not subject to later revocation or reduction if, for instance, the employee works fewer hours than anticipated by the employer. There is a list of permitted use of paid sick time. Employees may use the time for themselves or for a member of their family for whom they are providing care or assistance. For mental or physical illness, injury, or health condition, regardless of whether such illness, injury, or health condition has been diagnosed or requires medical care at the time of the request for leave. Also, for the diagnosis, care, or treatment of a mental or physical illness, injury, or health condition of, or need for the medical diagnosis or of preventive care. In addition to illness, there are qualifying reasons under safe leave. For an absence from work when the employee or employee's family member has been the victim of domestic violence as defined by the state human rights law, a family offense, sexual offense, stalking, or human trafficking due to any of the following insofar as it relates to the domestic violence, family offense, sexual offense, stalking, or human trafficking. Also, to obtain services from a domestic violence shelter, rape crisis center, or other services program, to participate in safety planning, temporarily or permanently relocate, or take other actions to increase the safety of the employee or the employee's family members, to meet with an attorney or other social services provider to obtain information and advice on and prepare for or participate in any criminal or civil proceeding, to file a complaint or domestic incident report with law enforcement, to meet with the district attorney's office, to enroll children in a new school, and to take any other actions necessary to ensure the health or safety of the employee or the employee's family member, or to protect those who associate or work with the employee. Employers are permitted to require that leave be used in increments, for example, 15 minutes or an hour, but may not set the minimum increment at more than 4 hours. Employers are permitted to limit the leave taken in any year to the maximum amount required to be provided to such employee. And any limitations permitted by the law must be put into writing and either posted or given to employees. Employers must notify employees in writing or by posting a notice in the worksite prior to the leave being earned of any restrictions in their leave policy affecting the employee's use of leave, including any limitations on leave increments. Regarding record keeping for this leave, employers must keep payroll records for 6 years, which must include the amount of sick leave accrued and any used by each employee on a weekly basis. Upon the request of an employee, employers are required to provide, within 3 business days, a summary of the amount of sick leave accrued and used by such employee in the current calendar year and/or any previous calendar year. It's important to note that for the purposes of this law, an employee is defined as any person employed for hire by an employer in any employment. If an employer has 5 or more seasonal employees, but fewer than 100, all employees, including the part-time seasonal workers, are entitled to accrue 1 paid sick hour for every 30 hours they work. Employees are only required to be credited with leave time for the hours worked and not for hours spent using the sick leave time under this law. So employees do not continue to accrue sick leave while using the sick leave hours. Also, employees do not accrue leave for payments that are not for hours worked, such as bonuses or subject to call time. However, that time is considered hours worked, including on-call time, training time, and travel time, must be counted for the purposes of accruing leave. Employees may use sick leave for appointments when they require treatment for a condition or for preventive medical care. Permissible reasons to use accrued sick leave does not include a period of bereavement. However, employers must provide sick leave for a mental or physical illness, injury, or health condition, regardless of whether they have been diagnosed or require medical care, as well as for the preventative care of such illnesses, injuries, and conditions. If an employer has been ordered to close temporarily due to a public health emergency, may the employees use the accrued sick leave during this period of closure. Whether or not the usage of sick time in this scenario would be fact-specific depending on the type of health emergency, including the risk of contagion and other health considerations. Again, for this leave, it's important to know that an employee's immigration status has no effect on their eligibility for sick leave benefits under this law. And then we get this question a lot: how is New York State paid sick leave different from New York State COVID-19 paid leave? Sick leave under this law is separate and additional to the quarantine leave for employees subject to a precautionary or mandatory order of quarantine or isolation related to COVID-19. And the use of COVID-19 leave does not impact or otherwise utilize an employee's paid sick leave accruals or usage. The last slide here does have our general email box as well as our hotline number, and my personal information was included in the booklet regarding the panelists. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Melissa. Great information. We will continue on with the program here with our final speaker, Elizabeth Walters is the Deputy Director of Public Policy at New York Farm Bureau, the state's largest general agricultural organization. Elizabeth is responsible for directing and coordinating New York Farm Bureau's lobbying efforts, establishing and maintaining a working relationship with lawmakers, their staff, and other executive office personnel, and advocating on behalf of the organization before legislative and regulatory bodies. Elizabeth focuses on several policy issues, including labor, environment, dairy, and energy. Go ahead, Liz. You're all set.
All right. Thank you. So here's my contact information, and it will be available at the end as well, but it's relatively easy. Just my last name is spelled a little weird. Next slide, please. Okay, so Melissa went through a lot of the issues that I am going to talk about in detail. I'm just going to point to some important things to think about and important dates moving forward in terms of advocacy and getting involved in helping the agricultural community at a large in New York State. So Melissa talked a lot about the overtime threshold law. 60 hours a week is the trigger for now. If you've all been paying attention to this issue, there was a wage board that consisted of 3 members, a representative appointed by the Commissioner of Labor, a member of the AFL-CIO, and then our president, New York Farm Bureau President David Fisher. And they had the task of deciding if the overtime threshold should be reduced as of January 1st of this year. On December 31st of last year, they decided that it would be consistent and stay at 60 hours for this year. However, they did allow for a wage board to be reconvened next year, not before November, but no later than December. So we will be going through the task of hopefully informing the wage board of why the 60-hour threshold is effective and good for agriculture and employees. And hopefully we'll be able to delay any further ratchet down of the threshold a little bit further until we know the economic impacts on agriculture. This was a different year, to say the least. Definitely dealt with some different issues because of COVID. We have, as everybody knows, in agriculture, commodity prices have been low for the most part, particularly dairy. And how is that overtime really going to impact farm profitability moving forward? So we're going to hopefully be able to educate and inform. If you have information and would like to get involved in this, please feel free to reach out to New York Farm Bureau. I think it's a great issue for the entire industry, both farmers and agribusinesses who rely on farmers for their business to take part in. So one point on the mandatory overtime on the voluntary day of rest, it is a trigger regardless of the number of hours that the employee has worked. So if that employee is, hits the threshold on that 7th day or before, they do have to be paid overtime on that day. Another issue that was not brought up is, as of this year as well, there are new housing requirements for farms that were previously exempt from inspections with 4 or fewer employees. Melissa talked quite a bit about the minimum wage. It's $12.50 for the remainder of the state, including Niagara County. And also a note too that the ultimate goal, so the ultimate goal with, I think, the legislation for the overtime and then also with the minimum wage is set to hit a certain amount. With the overtime, it's 40 hours a week to be consistent with other, at least in the legislative mind, to be consistent with other industries. And for minimum wage, it's also to hit that $15 threshold that New York City, Westchester, and Long Island are eventually going to hit as well. So as of October 1st of this year, the commissioner is required to issue a new minimum wage for 2022. And that will be determined by the Division of Budget and the Consumer Price Index, and that will continue to change until the remainder of the state reaches $15 an hour, or the legislature sets it at some other level. Melissa talked plenty about paid mandatory paid leave. I'm not going to cover that. Just to point out that there really is no restrictions on the type of employees. It is strictly based on accrual. So if it's a part-time employee, if it's a full-time employee, if it's an H-2A worker, if it's whomever, there really are no caveats there. So please be in mind of that. I wish I had updates on the vaccine. That would be my favorite thing in the world, to be able to make an announcement that we have vaccines ready to go out, and the authorization to do so. Unfortunately, we have not received that designation for farm and food employees yet. We are essential workers. We really hope that the governor takes that action. Continue to work with a wide variety of individuals and organizations to really press this issue. It's funny, for the past 2 years, we've been sitting across the table from the labor groups and the worker advocate organizations, and we are proverbially sitting around a table right now working to advance this issue. We just signed on and helped draft a letter to the governor, again, with these organizations requesting that ag workers be included in the prioritization. So if you're interested, on our website, there is a letter. You can write the governor, our e-lobby system. It works very well. And please feel free to do that. The more voices heard, the better on that issue. Immigration reform, Congress, the House actually last week just passed the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. This would provide a H-2A program for multiple years, year-round, livestock and dairy. It would provide some sort of path to permanent residency for those workers that are currently within the United States, and various other provisions. So we've been working on that. It goes over to the Senate now. Obviously, this is an issue that I handled when I did national affairs back when I started with Farm Bureau. It always is one that gets boggled down in politics, but there are some really good practical solutions that we've been trying to work for. Hopeful that all the crisis on the border and other issues don't derail this again. We've gotten really, really close on this a couple times with the leadership of Senator Schumer and others. So we remain hopeful on this issue, because it really is imperative for our farm businesses to have a solution for immigration reform. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of resources when it comes to labor issues. Obviously, our website, if you're a member, we have a ton of fact sheets. We have a labor book. We provide legal referrals. So if you need some help with drafting policies or anything like that for your employees, we do have resources that we can send you to. The Ag Workforce Development Center at Cornell University with Dr. Stupp is very, very helpful. He has a ton of resources and research that he continually does, and he can often answer questions specific to your operation, or kind of a little bit more on the general side. Obviously can't give a legal advice and that stuff, but a lot of really good resources there. Also, the Department of Labor Agricultural Labor Program is a really good resource for information. I've been really impressed with going to the website lately and being able to figure things out. There's FAQs available. There are, issues that are specific to agriculture. It's a great place to start. All your posters and notices and stuff like that, what you need to have is a great place to go. For workers' compensation questions, the Workers' Compensation Board website can be helpful. If you are a member of New York State Workers' Compensation Group, We also can help you as well. So please feel free to visit our website and explore that option too. Next slide, please. So what we do at Farm Bureau, we're really about advocating for our members and providing education on these issues. We've kind of had a three-pronged approach to labor issues. We work with farmers to help find answers on individual questions with regulatory agencies, help connect and play that role. Obviously, if it's real individual stuff and you need a legal resource, we do have that legal referral option I talked about. Advocacy, we continue to monitor and track legislation, regulation. We try to engage our members on issues to educate lawmakers because our members are our best voices on these issues, to talk about real world examples of how labor law intersects on farms. We tend to have some different situations than some other employees and deal with kind of a diversity of laws, particularly if you deal with H-2A, immigrant and migrant. There's different requirements for each of them. So keeping track of that and how amending one section of the law can influence those. And then we have, as I mentioned, our e-lobby platform on our website. There are a number of letters up there right now: vaccines, budget, pesticide regulations, and it's our way to get our members to be able to directly connect with lawmakers. And John mentioned too, our lobby days, our counties are really active with their members, but we also have a adopted legislative program that connects our upstate farms with downstate members to a varying degree of success. But we do have some really good success stories there, and that's great. Education, kind of the last pillar, is trying to work with industry partners, associations, agencies, Cornell, to educate farmers on regulations and laws. Dr. Stepp, who I mentioned previously, is a great partner there. We also employ sometimes some outside attorneys to help provide educational seminars there. Webinars, we're part of the Labor Roadshow, e-newsletters. If you're a member, please make sure you're signed up for that. And then Grassroots, our monthly newsletter, we provide resources there. Next slide, please. So getting involved, obviously become a member, it's well worth it. e-lobby, as I mentioned before, and just really helping to elevate, regardless if you're a Farm Bureau member. Obviously I encourage you to become one, but help really educate and elevate farm voices. Any way you can help and speak out, talk to your members. If you're not a farmer but you deal with one on a daily basis, ask them questions about issues that are impacting them and how you can get involved and help them with those issues. Next slide. So talking on the worker side, there are a lot of really good programs and resources out there. Obviously, there's the regulatory framework as well, which I'll talk about. But NICAM provides on-farm safety training to help farmers comply with various requirements. They do fit testing for respirators, which is really, really important. This year has definitely been a challenge because of financial resources for the organization, but as well as just trying to get the necessary respirators with the demand on N95 and other respirators. They do youth farm safety programs, farm emergency response. There is also financial resources through NICAM. They have the John May Safety Fund. Have to drop that because we definitely want to make sure folks participate there. But if you're looking for any of those resources, I'm happy to help connect you, or you can visit their website as well. OSHA, they set the standards, did an OSHA meeting yesterday with the New York office just to talk about some of the common accidents that they're seeing on farms, and how we can help with compliance to make sure that we're avoiding those common hazards that come up. And then the worker protection standards, and this is by no means not an exhaustive list of worker programs, but the worker protection standards really help to minimize exposure to pesticides, and there are various ways to avoid that and have best management practices on your farm to help with that. And I think that is it. Next slide. Yeah, so here's my contact information. Happy to go in depth on any of these topics, but I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of everything that we've been working on lately. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liz. And thank you to all our presenters today. And I encourage our attendees to reach out to them. We will be providing an e-booklet with all the available links and contact information of all our speakers over the course of the last 2 days. I just want to promote the Small Business Development Center Entrepreneur Series that was mentioned earlier by Bree. They also have a Microsoft Teams webinar free series as well. So please visit those websites, check out that information, reach out to these folks. They're here to help. They're here to make you successful and help the farms and the business. And I appreciate everyone coming on today. Thank you to all the presenters. Excellent job. When you exit the session, there will be a survey to fill out and submit. Please provide any feedback to help us improve the program or any topics that you would like us to see or would like to see in the future. And hopefully we will see you next year and in person. And I'll leave it at that. So thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye, thank you.